so I take both roles. Now, a little bit about the tribe. It's a collaborative space meant really for tech entrepreneurs for the most part. We help them get ready for the next round of financing. In fact, since we've been open not too long ago, we've helped about 5 companies get in front of investors, and we've helped them raise about $1.5 million. So we do that, and we offer free tech space to great startups, just because we can. So if you're interested, grab the card on your chair and give me a call, or give Mena a call. But here we are for the treat of the day, and what a treat it is. Daryl Hatton is the CEO of award-winning international crowdfunding company Fundraiser, and of the innovative sponsored crowdfunding company Sponsorify. He has founded multiple startups and helped bring one to a successful NASDAQ IPO in 1999. He actively serves on the board of or advisor of a handful of other companies in Canada. In addition, he is Director of Crowdfunding Ambassador for the National Crowdfunding Association of Canada. Daryl has been involved since the beginning of various crowdfunding platforms and can speak about the differences as well as each of their benefits. So please, with me, let's give it a really nice round of applause to Daryl.
Well, cool. So we're doing a lot of live presentations as part of this. So we've got it going on Facebook and Join Me and that kind of thing. So one of the things was we were scheduled to start some of that portion of the talk in about 8 minutes. And I'd like to take the time before we kind of get into the formal presentation to find out a little bit about you. Because there's no point in me standing up here and pontificating about crowdfunding in a whole bunch of different ways if I'm just giving you a bunch of blather information. I'd rather know some things that are very specific to what you're interested in. So a couple of quick questions. Who here is either has a new startup or works for a startup and are in the process of raising funding? Okay. Anyone here on the charitable side or looking for trying to do a social innovation type project? Okay, good to know. Yeah. And has anyone been through the process before? In other words, are they a repeat entrepreneur? This is their second, third, fourth company, whether or not it worked the first time. Okay. You know, one of the things about the startup world right now is that the experience, we have a bit of a problem in Canada, I think, sometimes, of not allowing ourselves to take the risks necessary to start a company. And sometimes that means we fail. And over the course of my career, I've had, we like to call, a couple of really good successes and a couple of really interesting failures along the way. So I don't tend to brag about those enough. I don't like the Silicon Valley idea that you kind of celebrate your failures so heavily, because sometimes it means that you didn't try hard enough or you weren't being smart enough on it. But it's also important to recognize that those are really good learning experiences for us in starting our company. So for example, some crazy companies I had a company that did graphics for the movie industry. Early days, we did some stuff on MacGyver and things like that, if anybody's old enough here to know that. And some of it was absolutely terrible. It really was. But it was a great way to learn about doing a startup and a business. And then the big win that we had was a company called Optio. And what we did was we started up a little idea that we had in the basement in Lynn Valley in North Vancouver. Basic concept there was we were doing a consulting business. We were helping BC Gas do a service records information system and things like that. And I don't know how many of you recognize or feel the same kind of thing, that when you're in the consulting business, it's a great thing that it's a boom and bust cycle. For a little while you go along and you get a client and you do great work for the client and you really make them happy, and then you starve to death waiting for the next client to be able to come through the cycle and close. We were definitely having that my business partner and I were having that problem. We were really good at servicing the accounts and very poor at actually acquiring new business. So we said, well, the way to solve that is to take the fact that we're good at developing things and see if we can develop a product. So we went looking for a product to develop. We found it in the weirdest place. We were sitting at Comdex, the big computer industry trade show in Las Vegas, and literally overheard a conversation at the next table where somebody was going, you know, it would be great if I could just get somebody to do this. And the this was to take the output of an enterprise software application like an accounting system or a SAP or Oracle Financials or JD Edwards or one of those, and print the documents on a laser printer. That's how old this was. This is early 90s. We said, well, we can do that. We left the bar at the Las Vegas Hilton with a handshake deal that we would write it and he would sell it. He was a complete flake. Absolutely didn't do it at all. But it was a great idea. And we went back and we built the product in our basement, and we struggled for a year as an entrepreneur trying to get funding. We got friends and family to invest a total of $150,000 in us at those days, which was a reasonable amount of money to start a company. And we got to the point where we were pretty much technically bankrupt. We were really struggling with it. But we got a partner in the States who wanted to sell the product, and they sold just enough for us to start doing a little bit of advertising. We put in a business card size ad in a computer magazine at the time. And we sold absolutely no software from that ad, but we sold the company. There was a company in the States that was looking for this kind of technology and ended up acquiring us, and we sold in as opposed to selling out. This wasn't the idea of getting rid of the company, but finding a different way to grow it, which is an important concept, as a CEO. What's the best way for you to grow your company? And they had the money and the marketing resources. We had the product, and we sold it in there. We ended up going public on NASDAQ in December of 1999 as one of the hottest growth companies of the year in that year, 66th fastest growing company in the United States. And that little idea that we had that we stole at Comdex ended up worth $650 million in the market. So crazy times. Now we joke that my wife and I joke we won the lottery and lost the ticket because we weren't allowed to cash out as founders of the company. And I don't know if you recall, but in 2000 there was something called the dot-com crash, and those shares that were worth a wonderful amount of money ended up worth zero by the end of the next year. So win some, lose some. But anyway, that was a little bit of a background on kind of where it came from. Ended up working with that company until 2008. Decided that it was time to quit commuting to Atlanta, Georgia from Vancouver for work, which was really hard on my back and my bum. And we ended up selling the company to our largest competitor, worked 6 months in a day, and started the next company called Connection Point, which is in the crowdfunding space. So how are we doing for time? Bang on 1:30. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about it. Point of the talk today is to talk about crowdfunding as an entire market segment and as a series of techniques. It's to give you a broad overview about what crowdfunding is, how it can be used, give you some examples of different use cases about how you can use it, where in the life cycle of your company you can use it, and just some of the innovations that are happening in there. So you've got an idea of how you might apply it to your own funding projects. Okay, so let's go forward. Now, I'm going to be two-handed now, and we'll see how well I handle this. I'm not that talented. Crowdfunding is a lot like the proverbial elephant and the blind. The problem is what part of it you understand depends on what part you really have been touching. So if you're touching the tail, you might think it's a rope, and if you're touching the leg, you might think of it as a tree trunk, and if you're touching the ears, you might think of it as a fan. But it's all part of the same elephant. We tend to think of crowdfunding, depends on how we viewed it in our lives so far. And the problem with it is that you can use it for all sorts of different kinds of things. If you are a charitable cause, you can use crowdfunding for raising money in a traditional donations type model. If you're a sport team, you can use it to maybe fund something like you're going to go on a road trip or you need new uniforms for your team. If you're a politician, you can use it to fund your campaign. Obama was famous for using crowdfunding for his 2009 campaign. If you have had a medical condition and you need to raise money because you might need to go for treatment somewhere. Or you might need to have family members join you. You know, you've got a small child that's in the children's hospital, but you're from up north. You might need to finance your time in a hotel or a place in Vancouver while your child's at children's. You can use crowdfunding to do that. And the one that you're most interested in today, I think, is where you can use crowdfunding to fund your business or the development of a project or a product. So all of these are different aspects of crowdfunding. My definition of crowdfunding is a little different from some. I don't care about talking about a platform or a project. I think crowdfunding is about people working together, about collaborating as a community between all the participants, the people that are consuming, the people that are creating, the people that are benefiting, to solve a funding problem. So people working together to solve a funding problem using technology. As a result, there are a lot of different crowdfunding models. We're going to talk about most of these today. The ones that you're most familiar with are probably the donations model. You're using it to raise money for a charitable type cause. You might know it because you're familiar with the Kickstarter, Indiegogo fundraiser type models, where you're giving some rewards. You are asking for contributions from a supporting community, and you're going to give them something back for that work. There's the new stuff that's going on where you can use crowdfunding to sell equity or securities in your company, where you're trying to raise money as an investment platform. There's a whole huge group of the market that's talking about using crowdfunding as a lending platform, where you peer-to-peer lending. You're getting a loan not from a traditional bank, but from members of the public in a crowd. And then there's a new segment of crowdfunding that's coming up where crowdfunding is used as a marketing tool to help you expand the market for your product or to help make awareness of your product as a corporate social responsibility type aspect. So, let's talk first about securities crowdfunding. Securities crowdfunding security is any kind of offer or setup where you're going to get a financial return for your investment in the product or project. Securities crowdfunding is very highly regulated. But one of the things that's kind of interesting is that in Canada, we tend to hold back and think that the US leads the world in a lot of things around creative finance. Canada has been a leader in crowdfunding. We don't always know that. And the key thing is that it's actually been technically legal to do crowdfunding in British Columbia for years, using one of the exemptions that we've had available here. So let's talk a little bit about how this works. Basic idea of securities crowdfunding is the government wants to take care of us and protect us from bad deals. So as a result, they have a thing called exemptions. The basic idea is they say you're not allowed to do anything. You're never allowed to sell shares in your company to anybody, period. But if you follow a certain set of rules that we'll put out, we'll give you an exemption from that rule that you're not allowed to sell it, and we'll let you sell it to certain groups of people. So these are called exemptions. And there's a whole variety of exemptions that you can use to help in funding your company. The number one exemption is what's called the private issue exemption. You can give shares in your company to the people that work with you, that work there. So it's this is how we start companies initially. You have a private issuer. There's also an exemption for giving shares to friends, family, and close business associates. So friends, got to be careful of that one for a variety of reasons. You can't have a friend who's a brand new friend. You just met in the bar last night, they're now your friend, you can get them to buy shares in your company. Their definition of a friend under this is they come over to your house, they open the fridge, they take food out, they sit down and they go, hey, how's it going? That's the kind of level of friend that would qualify for a friends and family business exemption. Business associate, somebody you've done business with over a large number of years so that the securities regulator would feel like they know you well enough to know whether or not you're making a scam here. There's something called the accredited investor exemption. An accredited investor is what we typically would call an angel investor. The concept in the law is that they've made enough money in their lives, they have enough assets already that they can survive making a bad decision. that they can go and they can invest money, lose it all with you, and they still won't be significantly harmed. So the thing that in accredited investors, if you're thinking of somebody who's got a net worth of probably well over $1 million, they might be making $250,000 a year or $350,000 with their spouse. And this is how they would be qualified to be able to make an investment in your company. The thing that's been out there for quite a while is something called the offering memorandum exemption. Offering memorandum is where you lay out a fairly complicated document that talks about the business offer. What type of terms are that you're offering? What's the nature of the business? What are the risks involved with the business? Who are the principals in the business? And why you're looking to raise money. So you create this document, and using that document, then you're allowed to sell shares in your company to people who will sign off that they have read this offering memorandum. The thing about these is that there's a patchwork of regulation across the country. Different parts of the country will allow you to use these exemptions, and some of them will not. So for example, until recently, Ontario was quite reticent to let you use some of the other exemptions that we're going to get into. So it's important not only to consider what exemption you're trying to use, but who you're selling the shares to and where do they reside. If you're trying to sell shares in your company to someone in the US cares about that investor and wants you to conform to their regulations. Is this cutting in and out a lot?
Yeah.
Is it bad?
No.
No? Okay, we're cool. So you have to be careful about where the investor resides when you're doing your offer to them. You can't just offer to anyone, anywhere, at any time, because you have to have an exemption in the district or area where they reside in order for them to invest in your company. There's a lot of complication here. We'll talk a little bit more about how to make that easier for you in a sec. One of the things that got recognized is that doing something like an offering memorandum is quite complicated and quite expensive. And if you're a startup and you're trying to raise a small amount of money now to get your business off the ground, the cost of doing an offering memorandum was too high. You would really spend most of the money that you're trying to raise on getting yourself through the documentation process and not have anything left to build your business. So, little trivia question for you. Who knows this one? So in Canada, where did the healthcare system start? The idea of universal healthcare in Canada?
Saskatchewan NDP.
Saskatchewan. There's a whole, I say this because I'm a Regina boy, but I bring this up. But there's a whole concept in the prairies about community working together and about taking care of each other. And so that's a place where a lot of things like co-ops were founded, where people would jointly invest in giving loans to each other or working together to offer products or services to their community. So Saskatchewan came up with the idea of the startup exemption. And the idea of the startup exemption was very simple. We need to be able to help companies raise small amounts of money with the minimum amount of documentation, the minimum amount of work involved, because it's too much friction for helping your company. So what they did is they said initially you could raise up to $150,000, and now they've extended it to $250,000 up to twice a year from anyone within the geographic jurisdiction that has this exemption. And you can do it with a minimum amount of documentation. It's actually only a couple of pages of information on who you are and who the principals are behind the company, and you can sell shares in your company under this exemption. But you have to do it through a portal. So there's some portals that have started up to do this. But it's kind of an interesting option that the securities regulators said, we ask you to do a whole bunch of stuff to tell us that there's a deal here, and that it's a good deal, and that there's not a lot of risks for people involved, or at least that they know what those risks are. The benefit of something like this is the big innovation that they had is a caveat emptor, buyer beware. And they pretty much say that on the document you have to say, and you understand that you will likely lose all of your money. If you're willing to sign off on that, they're going, you know, we let you buy lottery tickets, why wouldn't we let you do this? So it's a very interesting innovation in trying to reduce the amount of regulation that's out there and help small companies raise the money they need. But When you start getting into trying to raise more money, $500,000 to a couple of $1 million, you start getting into the problems that level of trust doesn't necessarily work well. So a bunch of the provinces got together and they created something called the integrated crowdfunding exemption, which will let you raise significantly higher amounts of money up into the 1.5 kind of million range. But you have to go through a much more stringent documentation process, and you have ongoing obligations to your investors through that process. So there's a lot of exemptions. One of the great things about being in BC is we have one of our national treasurer who actually lives and works here, is someone named Alex Corman. Alex is probably one of the leading lawyers involved in crowdfunding across all of North America, not just in Canada, and she's here. If you want to try and learn more about these exemptions and how they work and the impact that it can have on you, check out her blog, because she has some great, really detailed, very accurate writing about how crowdfunding works. Highly recommended.
Can you say the name again?
Alex Cormack, and her blog is there, Alex Cormack. Spelled slightly different, A-L-I-X-E. Okay. One of the other advantages we have, particularly in BC, is we have one of the leaders in startup crowdfunding here in Vancouver, and that's Front Funder. And they have a platform that will let you raise money using the exemptions all across Canada, so that it's not just about a local thing here. They can take a deal and help you get investors in Ontario, Quebec, in the Prairies, Alberta, for example. And they've done a very good job of making a platform that will conform to these regulations and help guide you through the process. So I'm showing you an example of their page here. They've got a couple of different kinds of projects that are funded. This was a screenshot from a while ago, but they did a wind turbine, a Peekaboo Beans, which was a children's apparel company that ended up doing a crowdfunding run. And then that was so successful, they ended up being able to do a reverse takeover on the stock market, and they listed themselves as a public company within a year, I think it was within a few months of finishing their crowdfunding. So very interesting level or stage that they went through in the process of financing and growing their business. And then Peak Fund is an entrepreneurs fund done locally that focuses on women entrepreneurs and helping to fund women-driven businesses. And if you qualify as a woman co-founder or woman executive on your team, talk to Peak Fund, because they have a unique interest in that. I know that the numbers are very small, but it might help you to know, like Peekaboo Beans was looking for $750,000. The Peak Fund looked to raise $500,000 there. And if we take a look at a couple of the other deals, they can range all across the spectrum. So Gusto was one of the first startups to use this platform. They were trying to raise a small amount of money because they're a small startup, and they went out to raise $25,000 as an initial project. One of the reasons they did that was for the exposure that doing a crowdfunding campaign would give them. A big thing about crowdfunding is that it gives you marketing exposure. You can help get visible in the marketplace because of your activities. And then that scales all the way up to Red Moolah over there, which was $2-point-something million that they raised, in a combination of work done on the platform and using traditional accredited or angel type investors in the community. So just wanted to show you that these types of deals are out there, and that they have a lot of expertise in actually making a deal successful using these exemptions. They have the kind of the knowledge and the legal framework that will help you solve some of the problems that as an entrepreneur you might have with inviting investors into your company. We kind of all think that it's a great thing to do to bring an investor in, but it can be a lot of work. I mean, you've now got a commitment to someone. You have a new boss, if you will, and that boss is interested in how well you're doing and would like to know about that frequently. And you have to be able to deal with them if you end up with another funding stage in your business, where you go when you may bring in private equity, or you may sell the entire company. There's all sorts of rights and privileges that those investors have that can derail you if you haven't set up to plan for it properly. So kind of the encouragement here is plan for it early by getting appropriate legal advice and getting the best guidance you can on how to structure those types of deals. Okay, before I move on to rewards, any questions about that at the beginning? Go ahead.
I believe there's a cap for equity crowdfunding where one person can only contribute up to $1,500. Is that right?
Great point.
So why would I want 100, 200 different investors in my company if I'm only raising a few hundred grand?
So the question is that in particularly around things like the integrated crowdfunding exemption and the startup exemption, there's a cap on the amount of money that an individual, regular retail or unaccredited investor can put into the company. And that's correct. And I think it's 1,500, but one of them was also 2,500 at the point. And so the question is, why would I want to have these type of investors in the company as opposed to having one angel investor who gives me $250,000? And it's a great question. And it really comes into the alignment about what your business is about and how you want to grow that business. A retail investor like this can be much more passionate about what is happening with your business because it could be a member of your supply chain. It could be one of your suppliers, or if you have a distribution channel, it could be a member of the business that is the net beneficiary of the work that you're doing with this partnership. They may want to have a piece of ownership in the business that they're helping to grow. And when they're a strong advocate for that, they are more likely to work your business and promote you in the marketplace more than an angel might. An angel's great, it's one person. But if you've got 200 passionate product advocates who are trying not only to sell your products, but might sell more shares in your company by referral, you've got an interesting marketing benefit that you wouldn't have with a singular or a small group of investors. And that's one of the real reasons. We call it, I call it participatory finance, where you've got people that have more than just a financial interest in what's going on with your business and might be interested in helping you grow that business and therefore have a bigger benefit than just an investor. Can I answer?
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about taxes?
About taxes?
Or how to...
They're inevitable like death.
Yeah, how to do kind of revenue before and during and after the crowdfunding?
So there's a couple different questions in there. I'm not sure that all of them we might want to answer right now, but might want to answer a little bit later. So on the equity or security side of taxes, there's the tax that happens when you get a gain on that. And there's various strategies for how, as an investor, to minimize the amount of tax that you want to pay. For example, if you're investing in a small business, most people have a small business capital gains exemption, that if the shares go up in value, a certain amount of that is tax-free, up to a cap, I think it's $750,000 or $800,000 right now. So but it's a very complicated topic, and it's very dependent on who the investor is, what their financial circumstances are. From the business's point of view, how you structure your deal to help the tax benefits for your investors really depends on who you're trying to acquire as an investor as well.
Yeah, I'm not talking about like a small case, like a person had like a sickness and they want to collect money for something, no? In that situation.
Oh, okay, so if you're talking about more of a personal crowdfunding type scenario,
Yeah.
if they're truly gifts that are coming into you, CRA or IRS looks at them as gifts. If there's any benefit that you've given back, where it could be assumed that you've actually done some sort of work to achieve that funding that came in, it turns into taxable income. So there's a lot of complications there too, especially if you're trying to do rewards-based funding. If you're trying to give a product back, there are taxable consequences of getting the money in for those products. But that's a lot of the kind of the basic nature of your business at that point. It's more when it's in a personal cause, it's generally treated as tax-free as long as you're not doing some sort of benefit back to the donor.
What about as the political reasons?
So political contribution can sometimes be tax beneficial, and then you can deduct it from your taxes. Similar in the line to a charitable donation. If you're giving to somebody individually, there's usually no charitable benefit to that. There's no tax benefit to that. And so a lot of people go, where's my tax receipt? I just gave my friends some help with their cancer treatment, and you can't get a tax receipt for that. So I can answer more about that a little bit later if you'd like. Okay, so I'm going to move on to kind of rewards-based crowdfunding. The idea of rewards-based crowdfunding is giving to get. That I give something to support a project that I'm interested in, and I get some sort of benefit back. The benefit can be in terms of a product or service. The benefit could be in terms of access to some sort of event. You know, if you've got a celebrity and you give $100 or $1,000 to their project, they might invite you backstage at the U2 concert. Wouldn't that be cool? To get some access to be involved with the celebrities. So you're getting a benefit back. Now, I'm going to give you an example of one that's caused us a lot of fun around the office. This is the American Gut Project. They're claiming to be the largest crowdfunding scientific research project in the world. They're studying the microbiome, the community bugs that's in your system and on your skin and in your hair that help keep you healthy or not. So what they've done is they've been running a crowdfunding campaign with us over the last couple of years. They've in total raised about $1.8 million in total, 1.3 in the American side of this. And what they're doing is that they are getting contributions from people who are going to participate in their study, and the people get the technical results back of an analysis of their microbiome. And so what they do is they use the perks model of crowdfunding to sell poop collection kits. They're getting you to volunteer to submit a fecal sample, and they will tell you the microbiome that's in it, and use the data from that as part of their study. Very creative way to do this. The University of California, San Diego, Rob Knight is a fellow who spoke at the TED conference up here, and he thinks that your microbiome is more important than your DNA for your health. I think based on his research, he's right. So very, very interesting. It's been the source of no end of shitty jokes around the office. Their perks are like, this one here is a week of feces, and they have poop for two and all sorts of things. So. But the point is that you're getting something back for your contribution, but a lot of it is you're contributing to a scientific research project as well. Yes?
I'm just wondering how long it took them to get to that 1.2 million.
It's been over the last 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah. And you know, it goes in waves as they get press on that. They're scientists, they're not marketers. It's quite funny. They've done a really good job of setting up the humor in this campaign, which has made it very accessible to people. But it's, yeah, they could, I think they could market it more and have sold a whole lot more if they'd done that. So anyway, the point here is that they have a service that they offer. They're crowdfunding for that service, and you get money back for it. But what happens if you've got a product that's not yet complete? The last thing you want to do is sell one of them, because now you're on the hook for delivering it, but you can't have the money that you need in order to create the product. You know, the worst possible thing is I need $150,000 to launch my business, and you get to 100. What do? You can't really necessarily get to the end without that additional cash. But if you took in a bunch of donations, you now have to refund all that money. And refunding money, you have costs involved. So now you're worse off than when you started. You got some money in, and it cost you a bunch of money to hand it all back, and you're in the hole. So one of the great things about the crowdfunding model is what we call the all or nothing model. And the all or nothing model means that you can take a pledge to pay to your crowdfunding campaign. You can offer up the product or service that you're looking to sell, and you can take orders for it, pre-orders for that product or service. And if you get enough money that you set out in your project, so you needed to raise $50,000, and you hit your goal, the crowdfunding platform turns those pledges into real contributions and actually charges the people that are involved on their credit cards. And if you don't reach the goal within the time frame, they unwind all the pledges and there's no costs whatsoever. So if you hit the goal, great, you get the money. If you don't hit the goal, it doesn't cost you anything. And that flexibility to be able to do a test like that, or to trial your product in the market, is very, very valuable. So to give you an example of one here, this is a British thing that was just running the last couple of weeks. She has a fairly small goal. She was trying to raise 15,000 pounds, I think it is, or 12,000 pounds in the UK to create a new cake decorating tool. She's a passionate person around cakes. And so she's trying to make this cake decorating tool. And so she's selling them in batches to retailers for 695 pounds plus shipping. So the whole point is this is kind of a form of pre-commerce. You're selling a product before you actually need to be able to, are capable of delivering it. You're gonna take the money in from that and use it, in her case, to create the molds necessary to do these products, and then create the products and ship them out and fulfill them to their customer base. So it's an interesting way for her to, relatively low risk, put out a product that she wants to fund. The great thing about that testing process is it helps you as an entrepreneur determine product market fit. So product market fit is, I've got this product, how well does it fit the needs of my customers, and are they willing to buy it at the price that I'm willing to offer it? So by using crowdfunding, you can set up an offer and say, hey, this is my widget. This is how much it costs. These are the things it does. Do you want one? And if a bunch of people want it, go build it, sell it to them, and iterate and do it again. If they don't, there's actually, back to that failure thing, it's not hard to say, we'll try again. What didn't you like about it? What would you like about it to change? And start the conversation with this community of consumers that might want your product. Find out how to improve your product and try it again. So when we take a look at crowdfunding platforms, sometimes you look at, well, how successful were they? Well, success doesn't necessarily mean that they got funding. Success means they figured out that their product was great or awful as well, and that they could reiterate multiple times. So don't necessarily judge a platform based on exactly how much each project has created. Does that make sense? Okay. One of the things that's happening with crowdfunding is that we're going through an evolution. And we've started off with crowdfunding destinations, where you go to Kickstarter, Indiegogo, fundraiser, and you find projects there. A bunch of the smart engineers decided to make those into white label crowdfunding platforms where you too could run your own crowdfunding platform. But where it's evolving to is similar to what happened to shopping carts in e-commerce, is we're having crowdfunding show up as a service, where you can plug crowdfunding into your own website or own web properties and use the capabilities of crowdfunding to enable your commerce without having to become a crowdfunding platform. So an example of this was the Thin Ice Vest that was running earlier this year, running on their own platform with their own branding, but it's a crowdfunding campaign. Fund the production of their interesting thermal cooling vest that's supposed to help you lose weight, and I can hardly wait for mine to show up. And they were offering different versions of that product up to the market as a way of testing the product market fit, but within their own branding. All the coloring, etc., all the background, all the logos. There's another option. If you take that idea of crowdfunding as a service even further, you get into the idea of collaborative community payments. Collaborative community payments means that you can use crowdfunding as a way for your customers to finance the purchase of your product or service. So it's a crowd finance tool. So Enchroma, has anybody heard of Enchroma? They do glasses that help resolve color blindness. And about 80% of the people that wear them. And they're between $500 and $1,000, so they're not necessarily really cheap. Enchroma is implementing crowdfunding as a service on their website so that their customers can order a product and get their friends to help them pay for it. Because it's a small amount of money, it's actually a fairly easy thing to get crowdfunded. So they're hopefully going to launch this in the next couple of weeks. But they've put it in, they've been testing it for a little while. But the idea is that customers can sign up on their site and start their own crowdfunding campaign, and the money goes to the business to pay for the glasses. It doesn't go into your own personal account, and then they have to send it in and buy the product. So it's an interesting model. It can also go to a much larger level. This is a group locally that's called Living Garden Foods, and they're working on allowing their customers, being school groups, to help fund the purchase of their vertical gardens that go into the schools. So it's actually a $15,000 project. But again, they're using crowdfunding under their own brand and letting their customers raise money using crowdfunding to pay for their product. Hello?
That model is one of the benefits of crowdfunding is on some of the platforms is they help promote you, right?
Yeah.
So in this, how do you get promotion? I mean, unless your website's really well market and promoted, you're not going to get out in the same distribution as some of the major platforms.
So the question is around, does the platform help promote you, and how would this model work if that promotion or that community is not there? Let me answer it, because I actually have a slide about that in the midst of crowdfunding. Okay, how about that? You're a straight man for me. So let's do a little bit of myth busting. The #1 myth about crowdfunding is that as soon as I publish my campaign on the internet and share it out, the heavens open up and the money rains down on me. We just have to run around and scoop it up on the floor. We laugh. You know how often I have to disavow somebody of this or disabuse them of this, disillusion them? Because this is where part of that same question is about the platform brings you all of the traffic. If you have a hot product, the platforms will bring you lots of traffic. You become product of the week. You get a natural kind of viral evolution within the platform. If your product struggles a little in the beginning, you tend to not hit the trending list and you tend to get really quite dramatically worse results. The key thing that the platforms will tell you is that we need to get about 30% of your contributions done before you even get started, in order to start giving you that level of viral potential to grow. So there's a marketing function that'll happen. If you're trying to raise $150,000, you need to raise about 50 grand before you launch. Commitments from friends and family that they'll buy about that much in order for you to hit that trending level. So as a result, a lot of the function of crowdfunding these days, you're seeing a lot of campaigns that have crowdfunding consultants that are coming in to help you build that initial market traction and get you going with your product or service. Using traditional marketing like ads on Facebook, ads on Google, email lists, getting guest bloggers to write about your product before you launch. So, beware of this one because it costs you a lot more in terms of time and effort and the ability, don't count on it just going crazy once it gets out there because it also is a function of your product market fit. So back to your question about how that would apply to something like the school group marketing their product. That community, there's a community around that school that might want to buy one of those living garden vertical gardens, or around the glasses, there's friends and family around that might want to help their friend buy those things.